Hello everyone. So today we're going to talk a little bit about paper whites and making them. Because I said to some folks that I would try to make a video with them because they are a fairly fast little flower to make. And they're fun and they fit in, they match because you can make them all shades of whites and creams and pale yellows and darker yellows. And so you can put them into tons of things, which is cool. They look really good with tons of flowers, including poppies for that matter. Because I tried some out with the poppies we made and I thought they looked pretty cool. So, and I like them with the violets too. I don't know if they'll go with the little ones because the little ones are so cute. They kind of need to stand alone, those Johnny jump ups. But like if you ever made bigger ones, but those little ones are so cute. You kind of just want to have them do their own thing. Now, so we're going to look at first, because I started thinking I hadn't made them in ages. And so I started thinking, do they always have to be white or close to it? So I wanted to look at a few examples. So we're back to our low-tech, high-tech situation. I did put my grading filter on top of it. That's why it's a little more diffuse. But hey, light's going to reflect. That's what it's going to do. And if you want to go, if you can't handle low-tech, high-tech, this probably ain't the video for you. I just got to be honest. And if you don't want a story with your beading or a chat with your beading, probably not either, because we're about to chat. So, before we get started. So I wanted to see like what were the options. I was like, this is kind of cool. There's there's darker, even yellow ones and ones with like bright yellow cups. Now the cup thing, that's where they get you. And I tried a variation. I haven't perfected it yet, so I'm not putting it here. So I'm going sort of the old school way that I did with like a shrunken down daffodil, which I'm trying something slightly different. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. So we got this situation. They come in like clusters or singles, and you can see a lot of white ones. So we're looking at pointed tops, right? We have pointed tops of our petals, but they can have all sorts of ratio of length to width. They can get pretty far out there before they get there and almost looks rounded, but if you look straight down, you still see the point, right? They can be pretty darn rounded and have a pale yellow cup, and they have like 3. I always found 3 in the middle, so I use that format for the 3 stamens in the middle there. Now, here they can be more elongated, so you have all kinds of options. These, because they're small petals, really, like you can do 7 beads with like 8 rows, 9 rows, 7 rows. You can decide your own ratio. I'll show you what different like initial bead counts with number of rows will get you, and you decide. These are so small, like if you want to get bigger, we talked about before how you can either, add some beads to your center wire or add more rows, keep the beads the same, or both, or if you want to shrink. So you don't have that many options with this small because, you're basically working with like a 7 to 9 bead center wire and then deciding how many, there's not much variation. Again, that's why when we talk about patterns, sometimes what else are you going to do, right? I mean, besides, you got your basic frame. And so, but you can get wider. So that's, again, up to you. Wider, wider, wider. Notice again with a 3. So, and then this is a bunch of white narcissi, because we have daffodils mixed in there and they're all narcissi. That's going to get me in it. Aren't these interesting? These are these big puffy ones over here, which I don't know if you can see because like they've got so much puffing. I would not even think that was a daffodil in a million years. So I was just looking at kind of variations and how the edges of the cups, we can have very wide leaves. So basically petals. And then I like this one too. And I kind of made a variation of one of these, which I'll show you in a second, with this sort of blush pink center. Probably never occurred naturally in nature before it was bred that way, but pretty darn cool. I really like that sort of furling color with it. And so a lot of times we have a slightly darker center or exactly the same center. Here I like this one with the red edge. I might try that one time, probably do it with painting just to get that bleeding, because you can see how it's sort of bleeding into it instead of a hard edge. And more with the sort of blush pink. So basically what I'm trying to show you here is you got very narrow leaves. You got all kinds of options. You can't mess these things up and they'll still look natural. Look at this. You can pretty much do anything you want to with them. So now as a kid, I loved daffodils, and they were one of the first things I ever made as beaded flowers, because the white narcissus is actually the flower for, along with the poinsettia, which was a little more predictable and a little too seasonal for me. But the white narcissus, I just want to add more syllables to that, don't I? Is actually the flower for December, where my birthday is. And so, well, that's not the person I made this for. I made it for someone else whose birthday was in December. So in the beginning, I was making bouquets that were birthday flower months. So people could custom order, like, you know, like maybe their sisters or their kids, and they would do their birthday months and then make bouquets. So this was, I think, the first one I ever made, birthday one. And it was for 5 sisters, and one of the sisters had a birthday in December. So I would never make this now. It's so rudimentary, but she loved it, and that's cool. But like, look at the lacing, you can see it. I mean, but it's cool, and I made this big thing. But so this is my very first daffodil right there, and white narcissus, because it has to be white to be December, right? And so here it is with the whole bouquet. I realized I haven't, larkspurs for July. I hadn't made, or delphinium, it can be called both. I hadn't made delphinium or larkspur since then. And I did not know how to, I just made it up. I did not know how to reduce wires. Look at that stem. Looks like you could beat someone over the head with that. Well, that sounds horrible. It looks like you could, you know, I don't know. You could probably use it to hammer in a couple of nails. That's for sure. I mean, it looks okay. Well, whoops. It looks okay. However, yeah, the stem. You can see how thick that is. So avoid that mistake. And then in my own kind of iris, I thought I had figured out this awesome thing by painting the bearded, or not painting, because I wasn't painting at that point, by putting the beads, making the bearded part out of the beads inside the such an odd thing. And then these chrysanthemums. It's fun to look at your old stuff, huh? I think this is like the second bouquet I ever made that was big. But my point is, they are what they are. They got the crown, they got the middle, and they got 6 petals, right? And so later on, I made this one. This one I actually made for my sister with actual Paperwhite. So these were the same size as I'm going to show you today. And so for my birthday and her birthday, which is in February, so hers are violets. So they go really well with the violets too. I think the colors look really nice. And I'm showing you these because you can make them out of matte. Today we're going to make them out of a shiny color-lined bead. But I think they look very nice and matte. And I would make the Paperwhites with a smaller crown. That's how I was making them. Now, so these are our options, right? And so I just wanted to show you that don't be nervous. You can start with the one I'm showing you, and if you want one with bigger petals, then you scale up. If you want one with smaller petals, you scale down, whatever you're going to do. So I hadn't made them in a long time. So I was thinking, okay, I better make some before I start talking about them because I've forgotten how to make them. Let's be honest. So I made a few. They got tangled in my other projects right now. I actually tried to make so they wouldn't get tangled, but yep, they got tangled. So I wanted to try a few different finishes. So I made a few. And I actually like the way they look all together. So that's something to think of too. You could do a bunch of different kind of styles, even finishes, and have them all together. So this was one that's more similar to the one with the violets in there. I got this really cool bead, but it probably looks the same as the outer bead. It's actually 2 different beads. I got a new thing to put my camera on, but I don't like the lighting with it because it looks like surgical. Let's see, maybe it's better. Oh, that's really bright. I don't know if that's better or not. It has a low function. I don't know. I feel like it's better without it and using the other lights. Well, we're going to work with this for now. So, this is the one we're going to make. I made one here, this kind of a milky glass one with a blush kind of pink center. And so that one I liked a lot, too. So that one has this center is kind of blush pink. And that works. I'm thinking this is kind of cool, this lighting, because maybe you can see the pink better. We're experimenting together. Now, then I made one with an opaque kind of a pearl one. Now, I'm going to separate them because I'm going to show you what I was doing here. And then this one is a white lined light topaz glass with a white color line. And then yellow in the middle. And then this is the bead we're actually going to use today, one like this. And this is actually slightly different. I'm not sure if you can tell on the lighting here. Hopefully you can. It's a very pale yellow, and this is a pale cream. And the middle one, I'll show you what we use, but I always use, not always, but often use the same one for many different flowers because I love this bead for the kind of yellow it is. So here's what I was going to show you with the variation. It's not huge, but for example, this being like, say, the standard one. So this was like the standard one with a smaller crown, because I got really kind of uptight about the number of pieces on the crown matching the number of petals. But then it would be kind of small and skinny sometimes, which I didn't mind all the time, because again, there's that huge variation. Then I made one with the same size crown, but wider petals. So less beads in the center wire, but wider petals. So another option, right? This one here is the one we're going to make in a second. This is 9 bead basic frame with 7 rows. And this is the opposite, 7 bead basic frame with 9 rows, which gives you much wider, but about the same diameter, which was what I was going for. It was about that size, right? You know, about a little bit over 2 inches probably, right? So that's what I was aiming for. And then I was like, oh, well, what if I wanted the crown to be even slightly larger? So I added on some of these, instead of just doing 6 continuous loops, I actually did 7 continuous loops. So this is still the 9 bead center wire with 7 rows, but I did 7, so it's slightly, and I actually added 2 to make it slightly taller too. So you have these options to adapt. You don't, you know, if you want a bigger crown, if that's just what you like for your own aesthetics, or if it's better with the flowers you're putting with, or you just want to do a bunch of variations like all those pictures where they have different sizes put together. I mean, this isn't even nearly as much variety as those, but just a bunch of different finishes too. So this, again, this one is the larger. So this one really looks like a mini daffodil, since it has the topaz covering, so it's more yellow. And then it's a brighter yellow on the inside. And this has also the 7 continuous loops instead of 6. So these are options you can change. You can change the size of your basic frame. It's up to you. Now, let's make one. We'll make this guy, but we'll make it in a shiny one. So my base model, the one that where are you gonna go? In my notebook that I did. I'm gonna try to do this kind of faster today. So this is I have not done this one in ages. Back in the beginning, I would once in a while get patterns and look at books. I love all the old books from like the 60s, 70s, and 80s and stuff. But aesthetically, it's not what I do, but I love looking at them. They're just fun, right? They're just so cool. And then I started looking at some patterns when I first started, when I realized my hands, I couldn't really use the patterns. Plus, I'm horrible at following patterns or recipes or anything like that. So I blame it on my hands, but it's probably more that I'm just horrible at it. So I just realized I just have to do my own thing with it. And I realized then that once I learned the sort of basic components, like from the Arlene Baker book, the Beads in Bloom or something like that, that really helped with basics for me. That then you take those components and you kind of run with them, do your thing, you know? And so, because for something like a Paperwhite, what the heck else are you going to do? There's small little round bottom pointed leaf things, you know? There's not only so much you can do because we're controlled by the size of the bead, right? So, that being said, here's what I did. This one's small, apparently. I had to write to myself. It's small. That's funny. This one's so old, I don't even know. So, okay. So, for wider petals, so here again, I said about 1/2 inch. At such a size this small, I normally just go by bead count. So I did a 9 bead, 7 row, round bottom, pointed top, 24 gauge, 6 petals. Or for wider ones, I did a 3/8, which is the same as about 7 beads, 9 rows, and same thing, round bottom, pointed top. Now for the cup thing, that's when I lace together. This is kind of the standard way that French beaders have been doing daffodil-like things for ages. But I really like those cups, so I'll have to get back to you guys on later, because I found one that I tried probably when I wrote this, like probably 2 or 3 years ago. I was going to try, this is just the beginning of one, you know, to do sort of an amended sort of, like, kind of, I guess, like a beehive kind of thing. And that way it would have a smooth cup on the top. I didn't finish this one because I got kind of irritated with it. But you can see that it's the correct color. So that, if I get that down, I'm going to add that as a variation that you could use, as opposed to, first of all, lacing together all those continuous loops. That's the part of this that's kind of a pain in the neck. I'll be honest, because if your lacing wire is not good, you got to pull it real tight. So it can be frustrating. So I kind of wanted to make a cup that had a smooth edge to it, and I found this in my, spare parts one, and obviously it never quite came to fruition, but I think it was not a horrible idea. I'm going to keep trying it. Probably do a smaller circle up top and have a steeper side to it, and add a couple more rows, and I think it might work. So I'll let y'all know about that. In the meantime, lacing together continuous loops works, right? I mean, that always works. That gets the little fray up top too. But as you notice on some of those Paperwhites, it can be kind of almost smooth at the top. But you don't have to bend these down that much. That's the answer to that too. You don't have to. So you can just kind of tip the edges just a little bit instead of bending them down a lot like a daffodil. But the effect is kind of pretty for sure, right? I really like this blush bead. I did not know I was going to like it so much. It's one of those ones that in the tube looks kind of pretty different than it looks on the wire. I'm quite happy with it. So it's very nice little, I don't even know what the name is because I got it at my local bead shop and I just picked the number. I don't even know what brand it is for that matter. So it'd be kind of hard to order it again. I hope I wrote down the number somewhere. So then we're going to do, and then the stem is super easy. Those are just stalks, what I call stalks. They're not even twists, like fringe or whatever. They're just the ones where you go up a single row of beads and come back down into it. Super easy. I don't really do a calyx on small ones of these. You can if you want to. I just did like sort of a bunch of continuous loops that go around the edge of it. And the leaves are super easy. They're very, if you look at the ones you see them, they're just long, skinny leaves. So about a 2-inch basic with only 5 rows apart. So you probably want to lace those to the middle. And then the only other note I made about this was assembly is 3x3. So when I write that, what that means is that there's 3 up top at like 120 degrees each, you know, and then 3 underneath in the empty spaces, as opposed to like a pinwheel sort of setup that, so flowers can either go that way or the other way. So not a pinwheel situation. So let's talk real fast about, so I made some petals. So let's make some more. For this particular one, I'm using this new bead I got. I thought I'd gotten it before because it was one of my second favorite, my favorite shiny bead was this, basically a color lined cream, right? Because you can use it. I use it all the time for southern magnolias and peonies, and it's just a beautiful bead, right? But I realized this is not quite the one that I normally get. Normally what I get is like a Toho, this Toho one. Where'd you go, Toho? So I'd been getting this one all this time, which I like too. It's very warm. And then I realized that I had found this place that had this one, and I'm kind of excited though, because this one is cool. It's kind of hard to see it there. And this is a Toho number something, 201A. And I use that for so many things. It does not come out as cream when you, like, it's not as, it looks almost, can look almost white. It actually really works for southern magnolias. I don't have one of those around to show you. But in fact, actually this one was made from this bead and not this bead. So you can see it's creamy, but it's not quite that creamy. This is actually that bead. So that, it says color number 352. But then on here it says 201A. So that's a little confusing. But then I found another place thinking it was that and bought them. And it's actually this Miyuki one here, which is 2217. And this is about a ½ kilo I was able to find. And I really like this one because it's super creamy. So I can't wait to make a southern magnolia out of that one, because that's just going to be fun, fun, fun. So that's the one we're using right now, the slightly creamier one. So it's going to probably barely be less white. Let's see, here's one that I made out of it. You probably can, I can tell live, but with the camera and the lighting, you probably can't tell. But this one definitely is a brighter, lighter cream, which is interesting because I've been kind of swearing by that one for ages for my cream flowers, shiny ones. So that's what we're going to use for the petals. And those are quick. Like, you should be able to knock those, all 6 of them out in, I don't know. I don't want you to feel pressure, but pretty darn fast, right? So we'll just do one of them together because I already made the other 5. So you don't have to wait for me. So I just want to show you in the bead spinner what it looks like. I'm a little not convinced by this lighting situation, but man, I don't know what to do about that bright lighting. Okay, well, lighting's a work in progress. It looks perfectly lit when I'm looking down on it here. It's so interesting. So anyhow, so I loaded up onto my handy dandy 24 gauge pearl silver wire, which you've probably heard me talk about a cajillion times whenever I make anything light. Here's the problem though. Kind of a rare wire. Not super cheap, not super expensive, but I'll pay for it because I love it. Can't find it any of my normal places. Cannot find it. I think I just bought out all the ones on Etsy. I just can't find it. It's just nowhere to be found. So right now, all my normal places and anywhere, I can't find it. So I'm a little worried about that because I use it a lot and I got a lot of things coming up that I need it for. Because if you haven't heard me talk about it before, I would just really like it because it has kind of a matte, like a, don't be scared of the alcohol ink remnants on my fingers. I have not been doing anything nefarious. It's just, in fact, alcohol dye. And at this point, it seems permanent. Hopefully it isn't. I'll have to explain to my students on Wednesday, like, why their professor has. It's okay. I haven't hurt anything. Not injured. Just alcohol ink. So this one always just, I just like it because it's just not super bright, so it doesn't take away from the beads. Also, if you do paint them, it picks up the paint a little better. So I will actually, I do try to always do like the bargain shopping, but for this, I'll pay for it. This guy, I'll pay for it. I just can't find it. So now I'm going to be really conservative with it because I'm coming down to the wire. Literally no pun intended with that. I did not intend that. So again, I said it kind of quickly before, but for the narrower profile leaves, and the narrower outline leaves, I do 9 beads or 1/2 inch center on my center wire, and then I do 7 rows, or I can, if I want the slightly wider one, I flip that around, 7 beads, 9 rows. So, and I won't be super conservative with the wire while you guys are watching, because then it's going to make you feel like you have to do that. But that's why, yeah. So I would normally, just to give myself, because I have to hold it, right? So I have a lot of my old splint on. So there's dog hair on it, sorry. Yeah, I'm just a mess today, huh? It's a teaching day. I don't know, I'd give it maybe a little bit of room. Just, for me, I need a little room so I can grab onto that. That's like my anchor, you know, but I don't need that one. I'm actually going to reduce to 1 wire, which I rarely do, but these are such little flowers. I want them to have a narrower stem. So I'm going to reduce, and you don't need much twisting. I'm an over twister. I've said that a cajillion times. I'm an over twister. So back we go. Let's flatten our wire. I always seem to do that with it to just get it into one arc. Now we're going to do the round bottom, pointed top. And so we're going to, you know, we want to have this sort of, now notice, remember what we looked at in the beginning. That's why I always show you those pictures in the beginning. Even though it's a round bottom point, even the narrower ones, they still get sort of out there. So you don't want to do a really elongated one. You can though. Look at all the, like I said, there's so many options, but that's just not what we're going for. So I'm going to do round bottom, which means I'm going to have it like a 90-degree angle. I'm going to kind of pinch that bottom bead with my fingernail and pull up from there so that I keep that sort of out and up situation going on. So I have that round bottom, right? I'm going to even accentuate that. And I always do kind of get really uptight about how it fits. So I want to really have that round bottom. So I want to wiggle and jiggle and get that in there. Get that in there. Okay. So now, because we're not going like super pointy, we're just going pointed. I'm just going to go basically 1 bead past. So hold it down so that it's tight, you know, and get your rows together. Remember, you can wiggle it like that. It'll get your rows together. And so I'm just going to go, it ends right about there. I'm just going to go 1 bead past, even if it looks like an underestimation, you know, because you can always smush it up a little bit like that. So I'm going to go 1 bead past. I'm not going to, this is not an extreme point. So about 1 bead past, and then pull it about that angle, whatever that is, you know, just pull it across there. It's not an extreme angle. And then we're going to pull it around, and then we're going to fold it back down. Remember, we're always, see how I already mushed my, see that? Indented. That happens when you're old. Thing is, I'm acting like I did it really hard. That will happen. I didn't do it that hard. I got to be honest. It already indented my thumb, though. See? I'm doing it hard enough to do that, whatever it is. Because I want to kind of pull this down and have this nice little fold that just flaps right down at the same angle it came up. Flap it down, kind of fold it back over. Okay, so now we're going to make sure whenever we do pointed especially that we don't leave it like this because that isn't pointed, right? So what we're going to do, let me see how big we're getting. And if we're focusing, I don't know if it's focusing. What we want to do is get that bead pushed onto the center wire. So we give it a slight little nudge. You can almost, I could hear it click. You could have heard it click too if I wasn't yapping at you. But it clicked, and we want to see, now I have a true point there. Now I want to pull this using the beads under my thumb, pulling it down straight to really keep my wire straight so that it's not going wiggly jiggly. And then cut off equal with this. What we're going to be bending these, because you know some of them are furled, and we want to give them a little personality, because if they're flatter, like the one I originally made, I probably would have bent that slightly differently. I mean, you don't have to, but if we put a slight bend in them, it tends to give, you know, because these are artificial flowers, like what we talked about with the pussy willow, it gives them a little more personality. You can get away with being flat if you actually know that something's living. If something is artificial, then flat just looks flat to me. You know, so like, just give it a little personality, bend it up, or don't, whatever. You know, float your boat. So I always do it tight, because when you bend things, if it's tight, it'll keep the rows close together. So I want to cut real close to that bottom. I don't want to go past it. I don't want to imagine that I'm bending it in. I just cut it level with the bottom and then bend in. Now, again, if we're doing a round bottom, a really round bottom, I want to hit it straight across and see how it slips like that. I want the wire I'm working with right here, to just notch right underneath that one, like real tight. Because we're building these things. I don't know if it's focusing. We're building these things to last on this. So I'm going to notch that really tight. See, I'm using it against itself. See how I'm pushing it? Always pushing, pushing, pulling, pushing, pulling. Creating that tension there. So I'm going to notch it real tight to the point where this might bow up a little bit. Don't care. Because when I bend it, I'm going to bow it back down. Even better. So I'm keeping it real tight. Okay. Don't pop it off because you're trying to show off like me. So, and then sometimes you might be pulling this sideways. That's okay. You can bend it back later. So notch it real tight, pull it around, bring it around the other one, and then notch it back up in there. I don't know if notch is a verb, but I'm using it as a verb. So you can see now we got really tight lines because we did that, right? Because we really kind of jammed it underneath the other beads. So now again, push, make sure you push your beads all the way back. When you're doing a straight one, we're doing a round bottom, you're going to push your beads all the way back. Again, pushing, pulling, pushing, pulling. Push them so that they're right up on that center wire. You don't want them on it. You want them to be blocked, like jammed up against it. And again, just kind of pinch your bottom so that you keep that nice roundness to it. Help it along. Straighten out as you go. Dump a little bit more than you need. Pull it up. And then, if anything, underestimate, but with round, you know, see now if I cut it off here and I'm trying to make it sort of a wider round one, that's going to have some gappage there. So I'm going to even try to cut it off where you might say, that's not going to be pointed then. Yeah, but it's all about that angle. So I cut it off almost even with the other one. Oh, that's probably like blasphemy for pointiness. But guess what? We're going to make it pointy. Or maybe not. Then I'll have to go back and add a bead. So what? So now you go, that doesn't look pointy. Yeah, but now I bend this up top. I'm going to put my little bead right there and we're going to be just fine. Fold it back down. Look, pointy again. We're pointy again. So with this one, it's good to underestimate because we're not going for elongated pointy. We're going for kind of chunky pointy, right? For the most that we saw were like that. You can go for elongated pointy and then just pull it out longer. I tend to like chunky pointy better because you have less gappage, but I'm not going to do that if it's not called for. And in this one, I believe it is. So again, I'm cutting it off right so that this is really tight, pulling it right up on there, doing a quick twist around, getting it right underneath there, pulling it as I go, pulling it up, pushing it up, keeping it real tight underneath. Guess what? Only one more row. How easy are these? You're like, I know how to do a round botted point top. Yeah, I'm sure you do. That's cool. You can do them however you want to. So now I'm shaping always as I go, pulling, shaping, straightening. You know, your hands start to get to know what to do. Even these old hands, these can do it, you can. So I'm going to pull this one in, and maybe I do want it to go up a little higher in that one, fill in that gap. You know, let the wire and the beads kind of tell you where they want to go a little bit. So then I pull that down. I'm making a nice little point right there. See how I just twist it? Like you just naturally just follow the line of the bead. You don't have to like know what kind of angle it is. And for goodness sake, I teach math. If I'm telling you, you don't need know what kind of angle it is. You don't need to know what kind of angle it is, because goodness knows, I'll tell you. if there's an angle I want you to know, because I like angles. But what I'm telling you is just follow the natural flow that you've already constructed. Now, last pass, and we're coming down, keeping this straight, kind of pinching up here to kind of hold things in place while you do that straight, pushing back, always pushing back so that you don't have gaps in your beads. You're pushing back as you're laying your row down, right? So you're laying your row down. You can keep it flat, do whatever you need to do, and then cut off your bead. And always just kind of look, like before you wrap it, go, now, do I have any gappage? Is my row coming out too much? Like, what if I had done it like this? Like, so let's say I put down, I don't know, this number of beads, just one more. If I had put down just one more bead, to me, that's just me. If some people like gapping, and that's good. Some people actually purposely do it, and that's even better. But if you're not aiming to do it, this to me looks too loose, right? Because especially when I bend it, that's going to really gap. So just don't twist it yet, and just double check. Okay, I'm going to pull out a bead. Pulled out a bead, tighten that one down, go, that looks pretty good. Still looks a little, like if I bend it, it might get a little loose there. It doesn't really, but let's see what happens if I take one more out. It's kind of like Goldilocks and her porridge, right? Then now if I did this, I would have to bend this over to have no gap, this bottom wire. Otherwise, I'm going to have play on my beads, which I like even less than gapping rows. So that means Goldilocks porridge is the perfect temperature when I put one more bead back in. Remember? I don't know. Is that like a story that's in other countries? Who knows? Like porridge being too hot, too cold, and just right. Well, just right. Test it. Test it for you, But don't do all your wrapping until you're done. So now I'm done, and I'm going to make sure I do my first couple of wraps. I'm pushing them up, right? Just to really lock in that bottom there. Just a couple around where I'm just really pushing it up. And then I'm just going to do a few more. Just loosely, whatever. Just to be done. Now, this is, again, one of those rare cases, I already said this, where I'm going to just cut off, so cut off about 1/4 to 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm actually going to reduce to 1 wire on this, because these are little dainty flowers. So that's our petals. So we got that. And then so I'm going to reduce to 1 wire. I mean, you can do 2 if you want to. You definitely don't need 3. So I'm going to reduce, and then I'm going to and you're not going to obviously need all that wire, but it's there. So bend it back halfway so we don't snag, crimp it, and then bend it back permanently away from you. And then depending on your wire, be careful with this. Sometimes you might don't mash it all the way, or you can break the wire. But this will make a slimmer profile on your stem wire if you lightly mash it like that. And also while you're at it, you might as well do a nice hard turn down for your leaf shape. Now, your petal shape. So now with this one, you can decide how you want to shape it. Some of them are bowed up, and then you can do that shape, which I haven't done for some reason, which I realized when I was looking at my old daffodil I had done for my daffodil, and I was like, that's kind of cool. So that would be a fun one to make. You can kind of give it a little personality. You can leave it flat if you want to. It's just, you can leave it like that. I've been doing sort of this shape instead of concave. Instead of going down, I've been going sort of up with my bends for some reason. So I'm going to stick with that because that's how I bend the other ones. But next time I think I'm going to do a bend down one so that the profile looks, like that. And then the crown is up here. So, but I did all these already. So we're going with this sort of shape for this one, however you want to do it. The way I make that shape, though, is to put your thumb right in the middle and then kind of bend it up and then do some sort of twist. I try not to always twist the same direction because I want them to look slightly, natural and random. And even if you do see daffodils with flat ones, again, that's because they're nature, so they get a pass on flat, and it's kind of cool. But, you also see fluffy ones, and it's just nice to see dimension with these, right? So we get 6 of these. We're making 6 of these guys, all pretty much the same, So far we have our 6 here. And we're going to do our little crown thing. Now, that's the tough part. So it's going to take a little work. So for my crown on this one, I'm using a really pale, actually it's this one, really pale, semi-frosted yellow bead that I actually got at General Bead, and I think they call it, I've never heard of Ceylon color-lined bead. I don't know if that was a typo or if that really exists, because if it does, I'm super intrigued, because how cool would that be? I love Ceylon finishes and color-lined. So they call it Ceylon light yellow color-lined bead. They don't tell you anything about, like, it's just either it's Japanese or it's Czech. They don't tell you brands or anything. They just tell you it's 120 grams of it, apparently. So I really like this color with this because it has, I like kind of mixing finishes for the crown. And I like just having a slight variation on it, you know. So we're going to make the crown with this. Now, the crown, again, you decide. We're going to do the default. If you want it to be bigger, add a continuous loop and maybe a bead or two to the loops. Now, just like, so I already spun it in my handy dandy Ritter spinner. I just like saying that, Ritter spinner. And I already have this set up, so I'm going to do this on 26 gauge. So I do this one on 26 gauge. And you can kind of try to match it. I'm doing it on a champagne gold 26 gauge, which who knows where I even got that. Because I don't use it that often. I think the champagne gold goes well with it. But, you know, just use this because it's all light. You could use silver and gold or whatever, silver for the whole thing. It's fine. So you don't need to get fancy with pearl silver or champagne gold. Wow, it sounds so fancy. Pearl silver and champagne gold. Aren't I just the fanciest beater on the planet? If you saw my setup, you'd say, no, you are not the fanciest beater on the planet. And I don't want to be, so that's okay. So, though I definitely need, I'm doing so many projects now. Oh my Lord, goodness gracious. I got to get control of the bead situation going on over here. So now, basically everything outside of the screen is a mess. So we're doing the cup thing, the crown, whatever you want to call it. And so I normally, because I get really uptight about things, I want to have my continuous loops match the number of petals I have, 6 for 6. But here's the deal with that. So what? You want the size more. It's about the ruffling. It's not about the fact that it's petals. So I do 17 beads or 1 16th inches. Now with this, again, if you want to scale up and make a bigger crown with it, still try to keep odd numbers of beads. Because if you watch my spider mum thing, I'm talking about when you do continuous loops, if you have an odd number, we want that one top bead. We don't want to be looking down onto wire when we make our cups, right? We don't want to be looking down onto wire. We want to be looking down onto a bead, right, on the end. And so if it's odd, you'll be able to have a middle bead with it. So you could go up to 19, or I even did one with 21 beads. I think the blush one here had 21 beads and 7, so it was a bigger cup. So you decide, scale it up. You have control. You have control. Not me, not the pattern, not the beads, not even the wire, you. So this was a slightly bigger cup than, say, the one we're doing here, which is this size. Oh, and this one here in my left hand. So you can see there's clearly a difference of sizing with that. Hopefully you can see that. Probably not over the black or the white as much. But, so if you decide that you like, you know, just spend the minute and make a bigger one. But so we're going to do 17 bead, and you're going to have to lace them. Now, the lacing is, that's, you know, I mean, I don't mind lacing in general, but lacing these cups can be a bit fraught, let's say. So with issues, shall we say. So I'm going to do 17. I'm going to count out 17. 5, 10, 15, and 17. And give yourself a little room. You know, I mean, I'm all for saving wire, but you also need to, like, use it too. So then we're going to make a loop, right? So we're going to just push it up in the middle somehow. However your hands kind of get it going. Turn it over. I always do, for the continuous loops, this depends on my movement. Right now I'm feeling like twisting towards me. So that means I want the bottom wire, the wire that's closest to me, to go over top. So I'm holding it tight. I want tight loops. So I'm holding it tight, pushing my thumb up in there. And I do maybe 4 twists because I actually want some on the bottom there. You don't want it to be too long though, but 3 or 4 twists, you know, about that long, about 2 millimeters of twist on there. Now, sometimes you have to shimmy it a little bit to get the middle bead up top, and you might even have to bite it. or use your, I just can't use my fingers. Some of you probably can. I couldn't do that if I tried. I can do it after I start it. So there, we've got one. And then we're going to keep going. We're going to do 6 of these. And you can do however many. You can do 7. 8 would be pretty darn big. 7 is probably the biggest I'd go. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, there's only so much you can actually do with these. Now, I'd probably, because you want it to be kind of close, so maybe about, you know, 1/4 of an inch away. Use your finger to stop it there so it doesn't move too much. There's always going to be variations, though, because any wiggle will make it different. So then pinch them together. Push, you know, use the wire against itself. These are just like the spider mums. Twist them. You want them to be about that far apart, right? About 2 millimeters apart also. And then make them real tight. You really, because you're going to lace them. So this is not an option. I said with the spider mums, like, oh, if you want looser loops, that's fine. But we don't have that option here. It needs to be tight because you're going to lace them all together. So we're going to do, you're going to do 6 of these, as I've said. I should probably, let's see, counting. So much fun with all of these. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Get a good grip on them. Otherwise, you're going to be watching me do these. And I'm too worried about counting to talk about anything else. So I feel like I should have a story about something or other. I don't really have a daffodil story. I did really like them as a kid, though. It's weird because they're not really daffodils in general, not my thing right now. I mean, I like them well enough, and they're definitely cheery flowers. But I tend to go for kind of fluffier, like chrysanthemums or peonies, things with a lot of layers and fluff to them for some reason. I don't know, a lot of body to them. So they're not really my thing anymore. Or like the hydrangeas I keep talking about that I'm making. The never-ending hydrangea pile. Right now, I think there's 1, 2, 3. I don't know. Let me see. Do I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 big old heads of them? I will share them eventually. I'm waiting till I get done with all of my thoughts about what color combinations I want to do. They were all, in fact, painted. And yes, we will paint another thing shortly. Thinking of something that's kind of easy to assemble so that you can have more fun with experimenting on the painting. Which is why I thought of a lily, because you got a lot of room on those petals. Okay, so some of them I can put together, some of them I can't. So we have 5 and now 6. So the last thing we need to do is lace these things. Now, in my notebook from ages ago when I made these, I wrote that I wanted the lacing showing on the outside. Now I'm a little bit like, I don't know which side is it better, because if it's a tight cup, then you see more of the outside than the inside. So you can lace either way, like showing your lacing showing on the outside or the inside, depending on like what you're going to do with your like cup, basically. So if you're going to like, so now this one, see, it's kind of floppy. I want to make sure I pull that one so it's right up top and really get it smushed down there. And it really doesn't want to be up top. And that's not the end of the world, because also I'm going to lace choosing it, so it's going to kind of have to go up top. Now, this is the part that's a little bit tricky. But so what I mean by that is, like, say for this one, it's really kind of like bent only right up at the top. So you're seeing more of the side. So having the lacing show on the outside, you might want to be on the inside. It's up to you. It's not the end of the world either way, though, to be quite honest. So I did all of my lacing on the outside because that's how I'd written my pattern, just to see the difference. So here you can kind of see it a little bit, right? Because of what I used with the bead. But that's not the end of the world. I used that silver stainless steel wire, the 34 gauge, with this. So it disappeared a lot because of the thinness, but at the end of the day, you know, you see it a little bit. So you decide. I did it so it's showing on the outside. Optional. So that will be the next step. So I'm going to turn this off and get that set up and then merge it together, and we will be finishing these guys up. Okay, so I'll be merging this next video, so there's going to be a slight cut here. Why am I telling you? You're just going to see me in a second anyway. It's not like you are going to... I'm like telling you so like you're not shocked when I come back in a nanosecond with more stuff.